Time for another edition of Jacket Talk from the studios of LEB TV, brought to you by Mercy, also by Missouri Cooperage, and by Heritage Bank of the Ozarks, with locations in Lebanon, Camdenton, and Plato. I'm Kevin Stubblefield, and yes, our special guest today is David Millsap. I tell you what, you think of Seals and Cross, Simon and Garfunkel, Brooks and Dunn, the old
Porter and Dolly.
The mini band is coming back together. We are breaking news today because Dave is going to be joining us on Jacket Nation, do some Lebanon football, some Lady Jacket basketball. So welcome back into the fold, my friend.
It is great to be back, and it's going to be a lot of fun when we get back in the booth together.
You know, it's been about 3 years. I think the game with Carthage in the playoffs in 2022 was our last broadcast on KJEL, and didn't really think this was going to come about. But you know, as the world turns, things change, and the symmetry matches up, and you're able to get back together.
You know, what I remember is the first game that we did together. You know, we had been rivals. You were at the other network, as we used to say about KLWT, and I was at KJEL. And I've been doing ball games for them probably 5 or 6 years. I took a job with Springfield PD. So it was going to be hit and miss being at games. And I was in the academy, was going to go do a basketball game between Lebanon and Hillcrest. And I get over to do the game, and you're there. And you had left KLWT, been out of the business for about a year, and hooked on with KJEL. And that was the very first broadcast that we did together, was a Hillcrest Lebanon basketball game. And then I think the rest of that year we worked together, me and you. And then I think Harlan Hutchinson was involved in the broadcast back then, but that started in '94. Harlan
was still at KJEL as sports director when I came back on as kind of a part-time employee, and then he went back home down to the West Plains area, and that opened the door for me, and I guess the rest is history.
You know, we in KJEL was so good to me, especially in the '90s after I left here and went to Springfield to work, because as you know, it was kind of hit and miss depending on what my assignment was. There might be 2 or 3 years when I was in a special assignment, I never missed a game. And then there'd be games where I'd have to miss because I was rotating, working nights and doing that stuff. And being in the patrol car on the north side of Springfield listening to you do a ball game by yourself. And but KJEL was really good, really for the both of us. And you know, my very first game with them was 1977. I got hurt at Parkview. We played a game at Parkview, and I got spun around an option play. I was a quarterback, not a very good one, and got stuck in the ribs, broke a rib, played the rest of the game. One of the best games I ever had because I didn't turn the ball over. That was rare. And Ed Sisson put me in the broadcast booth, and I did a couple of games with Lebanon Hall of Famer Ed Sisson.
I can still see Ed to this day. He would do a broadcast, not with a headset.
No.
He had a handheld microphone in front of him.
Absolutely. And when we were doing the game together, and I remember we did the Kickapoo game. I remember it specifically because Lebanon won that game. That was the year that we won 2 football games. After losing 42 in a row, we'd beat Hillcrest 6-0, I think. And then we played Kickapoo at home, beat them, but we shared that microphone back and forth. And with Ed Sisson. And then after I got out of college and came back, I worked with Sisson for a year. And remember, he wouldn't drive, so I had to drive him to all the games. And you were at KLWT at the time. And the game that stands out the most was, remember, we were at Rolla. And I think you were in the good broadcast booth, and we were in the auxiliary booth. And they had a huge lightning storm and rain and all that. But good times with Ed Sisson. He was a lot of fun.
Speaking of me getting the preferential treatment on the booth, nothing will equal 1991 at Sedalia. I was able to get there first, and I got the warm press box seat. You and Bob Ale were up on the roof, and it was 5 below zero that night. 5
below zero, last regular season game. You got there early, got the good booth. I'm up top, and I mean, it is freezing cold. And that night, for some reason, I wore cowboy boots, and my feet were freezing. I'll never forget, Bob Ale turns to me as we go to halftime, and he goes, "What do you want to do at halftime?" And I go, I don't care what you do, but I'm going to the car. And so I went to the car to warm up and came and did the second half. And after that game, I can remember going to Hardee's at Sedalia and get those cowboy boots off. And I had to massage my feet to get the feeling back in. But that was miserable to do a football game. And Shane Schoenemeyer was doing stats for us back then, and he was standing between me and Bob. And I remember his hands got so dry, he dropped his clipboard from the top of that press box on the people down below. And so we're probably lucky we got out of Sedalia.
You know what? That Sedalia has a new football stadium now, or recently constructed, but that old Jenny Janes Stadium, you and I did a game from the rooftop one night. I think it was 1997 when Chuck Blair was the head coach. Right. Great view from up there. Yeah. I tell you, if the wind's not blowing, top of the press box isn't a bad place to be for football.
No, it's not. You know, one of the best games that we ever did, and you'll have to remind me what year it was, we go to Columbia. This is the first year the battle was in existence, and we go up there to play them. I think they ended up that first year maybe going to the state championship game. It may have been one of the best games I think Lebanon's ever played. And we sat outside and did that game, and we had a great view of the game. And well, it was a great football game. One of the best high school football games I think we've ever done. And was that Columbia battle, and it was outside. But yeah, I can remember. Early on, I was doing a game with Mike Ward, and you remember Mike, and we went to Warsaw and did a game between Warsaw and Salem. You know, back then KJEL would do a game of anybody playing. And we did a playoff game up there, and it was raining on top of the press box. And the only thing I could think of is we're going to get electrocuted out of this deal.
Your time at KJEL, very interesting, not only doing high school sports, but you did MIAA basketball.
Yeah. Got to do Southwest Baptist University basketball and football. Basketball was really good during that time period. It was during the time of Jerry Kirksey. I'm going to say somewhere between 88 and 91 we did those games, and ended up going to the Elite Eight in Springfield, Massachusetts. And, you know, what I remember about those days, Kevin, and this is before you and I were broadcasting together, I would do college basketball on Mondays, Wednesdays and Saturdays. I would do jacket basketball on Tuesday and Friday, and then do girls games on Thursdays. And so I was doing basketball every day of the week except on Sundays.
All this while you were still the Leclerc County juvenile officer.
I can remember getting off work at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon and driving to Emporia, Kansas, and do a college basketball game, and driving back and be back in the office at 8 o'clock. But yeah, we got to do a lot of different sports, and then doing that college stuff was a lot of fun. And, you know, you got to do the same thing because you did baseball for Missouri State, and that had to be one of the highlights of your career.
Sure. Got to go to Fresno, California, to Austin, Texas, and to Lubbock, Texas to do regional games. So, yep, a lot of fun. My first broadcast ever was September of 1981. I just kept banging on the door at KLWT, and Warren Goforth he got tired of me hassling him, and he gave me the job. And Mike Morris and I did a Lebanon-Waynesville football game that went triple overtime. That was a season opener in 1981 for the Yellowjackets.
Yeah, that's a great way to start your broadcast career. But I've told this story before. So in 1978 and 9, I was doing a show on KLWT called Jacket Journal. And it was a bunch of us high school kids who were in drama and forensics. And it was really a good show. It had a lot of talented kids. And so we were on KLWT doing that. I went to work for the newspaper in 1979 as their sports writer. 1980 comes around. Ron Wallstrom had hired me, one of the great sports people, one of the great news people to ever be in Lebanon. And he hires me to do sports. And then I decided I better go to college. So I go to Warrensburg, and got lucky. Got to do college football, basketball, and baseball on a radio station. Was doing high school games on another radio station, or a couple of radio stations. Come back home, 1981, for the summer. Warren Goforth calls me and says, "Hey, we're replacing Gene Clay, who had been the voice of the Jackets for 30 years. We'd like for you to do that." So I toyed with that idea, and I thought, I'm not very bright, so I better go back to college and finish college. And they hired this guy that was just graduated from SMS who was driving a mail route from Stoutland by the name of Kevin Stubblefield. So I always tell people, had I not turned that job down, you used to be driving that mail route.
That mail route that was interesting. You had to sit on the right side of the pickup and the accelerator, of course, you had to navigate with your left foot and the brake as well, because it wasn't custom made for a mail route. It was my grandpa's pickup. So did that for a while, and then got fired from the insurance agency. I've been fired a couple of times from the broadcast industry. So, it's kind of been a topsy-turvy life for me.
Well, and not really. If you think about this now, and people don't get how consistent the voices of Lebanon sports has been. There's been Gene Clay, Kevin Stubblefield, David Millsap, and Ed Sisson. Since radio's been around Lebanon since 1948.
Correct.
There's only been 4 of us that have been the play-by-play voices of Lebanon high school sports, and that's something.
Wish Gene Clay was still around. He was just an encyclopedia of knowledge of Lebanon sports, and always interesting to hear him talk about his travels when Lebanon was back in the Mid-State Conference back in the 60s and 70s, and maybe even before then. Trips to Moberly, Fulton, winter weather, trying to make it back to Lebanon to open up the station the following morning. Just a lot of interesting tidbits from him.
And, and I got a chance in 79 when I was working. This would have been in the fall of 79 after I graduated from high school. In the spring, I'm working for the newspaper, and Gene Clay and Bob Williams, who you worked with, both of them, would put me on the radio at halftime to do the halftime show. So in 77, I get to do a little some stuff for KJEL. In 79, I'm getting to do stuff with Gene Clay, legendary voice, and Bob Williams. I'm doing their halftime show for them, and then during the basketball season, I'd be setting up the next Gene Clay, and I'm taking notes so I could write their article for the newspaper. He'd take off his headset and just hand it to me. And I would yell and scream. I can remember he wrote a note to me. We're doing the Lebanon tournament. He writes a note to me, quit yelling, and into that headset. But, anyway, Gene Clay meant a lot to both of us. We got to know some great people in this business, like Ed Sisson, and I mentioned Ron Wallstrom, and what a tremendous person he was as a writer. He'd been the sports editor to Daily Record and then the managing editor, but he could sit there and describe, I'll never forget, him describing the Lebanon basketball tournament being played in the old gym, and I'm not talking about the field house, the other one at the Wallace building, the smell of the FFA popcorn, and I mean, he just would put you in that seat, and what a great person he was.
My first memory of Lebanon basketball was going to the Lebanon tournament at the field house, and that was a gigantic tournament, a lot of great teams. Dixon was there one year and won it, but that was a great event. Mentioning Gene Clay, he asked me to allow him to do a broadcast at Boswell Auditorium so he could claim that he had done games at all the Lebanon facilities, and I was more than happy to do that for him.
It's interesting you bring that up because you're on one side of the Boswell doing the game for KLWT, and I'm on the other side doing the game for KJEL. I see that. So this is back when we used to monitor the station through the radio. Your headset was plugged into the radio. So I turned to your broadcast, and I'm listening to your broadcast as I'm broadcasting the Lebanon game so I could hear Gene Clay. And that's what it meant to me, just to know Gene Clay and the opportunity that he gave me. And then for you to do that, it's such a class act. And but to sit there and do a ball game and describe it while listening to the other radio station, you don't hear that very often.
Jacket fans might need to turn the sound down here, but you and I have both done a lot of big Camdenton Laker football down through the years, especially you and Mike Ward back in the 80s. That was kind of the halcyon days of Laker football. That had to be a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun, and we had an opportunity back then that, KLWT really dominated the market for a long time here, and then we started doing half Lebanon and half Camdenton, and Mike Ward, who had played at the University of Arkansas, was doing some games with me. He was the court administrator for the 26th Judicial System, and we got to do the championship game, the tie game with Marshall in 86
at Arrowhead.
And then in 87, the state championship against St. Louis Sumner, which was at Faroe Field. And then you and I got to do state championship games with Camdenton. And I'm telling you, Bob Shore used to do a radio show with Bob Shore, and I would tune into that and listen to that. And you could learn more about football just listening to Bob Shore describe things and talk why he did this. He was so great to work with, but so interesting to listen to.
Yeah. We got to do Camdenton state championship games at the Edward Jones Dome in St. Louis in 96. They lost to Excelsior Springs. 99, beat Helias, one of the best games that we had a chance to do. And then they beat Afton in 05. And the Lakers have not been back to a championship game since, but that was Laker football. They really set the standard back in that time frame.
Well, they certainly did. And one of the great things about KJEL, and we got to do a lot of basketball games at the Blue and Gold, so we'd get to follow other teams. And then if Lebanon didn't make it into the playoffs, whether it be basketball or even baseball, we got to follow other teams. So, those connections that we made over the years, and we got to do some exciting stuff. You talk about that win over Jeff City Helias, I believe it was, with in the final seconds, I think on a hook and ladder play, that Camdenton wins the football game.
Yep. And Lebanon Camdenton rivalry.
Yeah.
We always circle the games on our calendar. Harv Welch comes to Lebanon in 87. Lakers own them at that point in time. Lebanon goes off the schedule for a while. They get back on the schedule. And 91, 92, and 93, Lebanon defeats Camdenton. And that really kind of helped to turn the Lebanon football program around.
Yeah, Harv Welch turned us around. And then, of course, Will Christian has made it a dominant program. But those were big years because we had suffered. I mean, the years that I was on the football team, we were 0-42, 5-5 my senior year, and I didn't play my senior year. But just struggled through the 80s. And Harv Welch got here, and he really changed the mentality of Lebanon athletics, and not only in football. I mean, we got better in football. We got better in basketball. We were always pretty good in baseball, but we kind of went to a different dimension there. And so there was a lot there, and that started that rivalry. I remember Bob Shore one time. We talked to him one time about the rivalry between Lebanon and Camdenton, and this is before we were really successful. He said, we're everybody's rival, and he goes, and that's true. And finally, we started upholding our end of the rivalry during the Harv Welch years, but that was really fun.
Yeah, for it to be a true rivalry, somebody else has to win a game.
Yeah, exactly. Every now and then you got to come up with a victory or just another game on the schedule and stuff. And of course, once Will Christian got here and turned this program into what has become really a dynasty, and you can't say enough about him. I mean, he comes to talk to Rotary, and I remember leaning over to Doug Wade, and Doug and I played high school football together. And I said, I could listen to Will Christian speak all day long. And he made that game between Camdenton really mean something. And it was just a lot. It was like doing the Chiefs and the Raiders back in the day when we grew up. Or remember the rivalry between the Cowboys and the football Cardinals. I mean, it was that much fun. And it's just what he has done for this program and enhanced our broadcast. I mean, we became, I think, don't you, that we became better broadcasters in those games once we became so competitive and just preparing for the game and getting ready and the excitement that you'd feel going into the broadcast booth. We owe a lot to him.
Absolutely. We owe a lot to Dave Plasmeyer for Lebanon baseball because he elevated that program, and getting to do Final Four in 2002 at Columbia, that was fun. I got to do the Final Four for Lebanon in 1982 at what then was known as Simmons Field. That was long before it became Taylor Stadium. It was still the old rickety wooden grandstand that they put you out in the crowd, and the Jackets had that miracle run to Columbia in 82 and got to do the semifinal game with our friend Tim Adkins. He was my broadcast partner for that. So.
I listened to that game. I was working at the Juvenile Detention Center in my college intern. I was a college intern in 82, and my tie to that team was I coached those kids during the summer. And they have a losing record. They get into the district. They win it. They go to the next level and win that, end up in the Final Four. And Dave Plasmeyer will tell you, it probably saved his job because I'd played for him in 79, his first year. We weren't very good. I think we were 9-12, something of that nature. In 80, they weren't very good. 81, they weren't very good. In 82, they struggle. All of a sudden, they get hot. You got Mick Bauman and Matt Smith on that team, and Bauman may have been one of the best players to ever play here. Randy Lemery was on that team. And Robbie Sinkowski, I'm trying to think of all those names of people that they got hot.
Alan Simpson, who we see a lot refereeing and officiating baseball games. So anyway, they end up going to the Howder twins. I can't leave them out. Glenn and Lynn.
And they played for me during the summer. Anyway, they get hot and they win that. And Dave Plasmeyer doesn't have a losing season again for like several years. And then goes to the Final Four, and my tie to that, my son Jason was on that team as a sophomore. They had a losing record then, and they get hot, and they had Nick Admire, but the guy that really got hot was Chris Knoll, left-handed pitcher, and we got to go do that championship game. Dave Plasmeyer, from a standpoint of that coach that produced or exuded ethics, he's that guy.
Class act.
Oh, man. I'm telling you, you couldn't find a better person. He turned into a really good baseball coach, and he worked at that. And I got to coach with him in 1988. He asked me to be his freshman coach. And he became the best practice coach I think I've ever been around. And I can remember that 2002 team. They'd been at the Willard tournament. Remember, they didn't play well at all. And we're getting ready to go to districts. And he had a nighttime practice, and he let me go to the practice, and I'm sitting up in the stands, and I'm watching them practice, and he's drilling them, and for about 2 hours. And I'm watching them play, and I go, man, it's not even the same team that we just watched at the Willard tournament. We did those games on the radio. And then all of a sudden they got hot, and that practice made the difference.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that was kind of an amazing transformation with that team. Played Glendale in the state sectional in Springfield. Lucas Harrell, professional baseball pitcher and a very successful one. Before he transferred to Ozark, he spent one season at Glendale, and Lebanon beat him that night. Didn't really beat him. I mean, they kind of collapsed on defense, Glendale did. But then you get a Fort Zumwalt South in here for the state quarterfinal on that following Saturday, and on to Columbia after that. That was a lot of fun. You're still coaching baseball.
I am coaching at Stoutland. Joe Nicholson asked me a couple of years ago if I would be willing to be the assistant coach at Stoutland, and I've been doing that, having an absolute blast. I get an opportunity to coach my grandson, Brody, who goes to Stoutland. He's a junior pitcher down there and a first baseman outfielder. Some of the kids that are juniors are kids that I had when they were in Little League. They call it the Ozark Youth League down at Stoutland, but I've got to coach them all the way through now. And so I'm as you know, I love to coach. And one of the reasons I was leaving KJEL before KJEL decided to end their sports broadcast, and I'm glad they've partnered with Jacket Nation now, but I was going to have an opportunity to go coach. And so I really have enjoyed that. I coached here in Lebanon the summer programs for 25 years, most of the time 16, 17, 18-year-olds. Babe Ruth World Series, both of us were parts of that, both from a radio standpoint. Remember, we actually started television back then.
Exactly, with the Axe channel.
The Axe channel.
Absolutely.
And we both did some radio and television there, and then I got to coach one of the World Series teams. And I was telling somebody the other day, they were doing the branding thing for the city of Lebanon. They asked me to come participate in that. And one of the questions they asked me, this is a weird question. They go, what, if you had to describe Lebanon by a smell, what would you describe Lebanon as? I go, it smells like a baseball glove. And she looks at me and she goes, what are you talking about? And I go, for years, we were a baseball town. I said, we hosted the Babe Ruth World Series, and we'd had 4,000 people at the ballpark that would see the World Series. So Lebanon to me smells like a baseball glove.
And you won a game in the 2000 World Series, I believe.
We did, and we won the team that I coached in the 89 I think it was the 89 Babe Ruth World Series. We were the first team to ever win a game in the Babe Ruth World Series, host team, Lebanon host team, and we beat a team out of New Hampshire. And then I got to coach it again in 2000, and we won a game and should have won a second game. And we were playing a team out of Louisiana and had a runner at third. Brandon Clift was the hitter. He's a left-handed hitter. Kevin, he was on fire, and I decided to outsmart myself, a little whitey ball that I love to do, and I called a squeeze, and he popped it up, and the third baseman's charging, has to go back, catches it over his shoulder, double play, tags third base, and we lose that ball game. And the only guy that came up to me, Dave Plasmer comes up to me and goes, I would have done the same thing. And so I felt somewhat good about that, but that still haunts me to this day that I should have just let Brandon Clift hit the ball.
Brandon Clift is now the girls basketball coach at Ozark, and he would later go on in 2002 to score the game-winning run in the Fort Zumwalt South victory that sent the Jackets on to Columbia.
Zach Kennison got the base hit. Remember, Zach was had a really good college career down in Oklahoma, but Zach was really struggling at the plate and comes up and gets the hit to win the ball game.
So you're still a little bit involved in radio, too?
Working for KTTK. I'm doing a morning show for them, and this is part of my retirement gigs. And I'm also doing sports for them. I do a daily sports show, what we call the Sports Minute. And then I'm doing play-by-play for KTTK. They've got into the Frisco League. We did all that last year. We're going to do Stoutland Tiger basketball, both boys and girls this winter. So I'm looking forward to that. So it's retirement is busy but fun.
Yep. That's the way it should be.
Yeah.
Don't retire from something, retire to something.
Exactly.
Well, you've done that, and congratulations on your years of public service in law enforcement, Laclede County Juvenile Officer, Springfield PD, and the greatest sheriff in the history of Laclede County.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the fact that you had to put up with all that. I got to tell one last story. We're at the Blue and Gold. We're doing one of those 9:30 in the morning games where it's two teams we've not seen play. I don't remember who was playing. And I'm supposed to be on vacation. I'm working at Springfield PD at the time and lieutenant in charge of criminal investigations. And I get a phone call, and it's about a nasty assault they'd had on the campus at Missouri State. And so I told him I'd call him right back. So I go back to doing play-by-play, and I'm ripping through I think I had the first quarter, and I'm ripping through it. We go to break. I call the detective back. I say, you need to do this, this, and this. Hung up, went right back to the play-by-play. Next break, same thing. Then we go to in between the first and second, you're going to do the quarter. I looked over at you, and I said, I'd like to see Joe Buck do this. Work a case and do play-by-play at the same time. But you had to put up with a lot because there were times I remember being in the Neosho. I was working narcotics at the time and got a phone call. I had to leave the broadcast, and there was a couple of times where I'd look at you and go, I got to go. And you were so gracious to allow that.
No, it's going to be fun to have you back side by side with me in the broadcast booth. We're going to start that with the Waynesville football game this Friday on Jacket Nation Sports and KJEL. So great to have you back, my friend.
It would be great to be back. I cannot wait for Friday night.
Absolutely. Hope you've enjoyed our reminiscing on Jacket Talk, brought to you by Mercy, by Heritage Bank of the Ozarks, and by Missouri Cooperage from the studios of LEB TV.